Fellow IFTOMists and IFTOM officers, my warm greetings on the occasion of the 40th anniversary of our prestigious world body being celebrated on 25th of June 2009 at the Executive Council meeting in Querétaro, Mexico. On this occasion, our President Professor Marco Ceccarelli asked me if I can recall my thoughts as one of the IFTOM founding fathers from my past experiences during IFTOM formation for the benefit of the entire community with an eye to the future. Let me briefly introduce myself first and my background. I am Professor Jammi S. Rao, one of the 13 founding fathers, currently of course working in industry with Altair Engineering as its Chief Science Officer in Bangalore, India. In independent and emerging India, I was lucky to break the ice and get the first PhD degree in design engineering in 1965 from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. I came to the University of Surrey in England as a young researcher with an Association of Commonwealth Universities Fellowship for pursuing my postdoctoral research work in 1968. I will show you how my family looked at that time 40 years ago in England. That you see my wife, who is 24 years old at that time, my daughter and son, who both have 2 kids each, them standing in front of the Mother Parliament of the world in London. I was surprised to get a letter from Professor Konstantinov inviting me for the Constitution Preparation Committee meeting in Varna, Bulgaria in the summer of 1969. I think it's my work in India and in England and my teacher Professor Belgonka who had some role to play in this, though he never confided in me on this subject. I'm just about 29 years old and was wary of rubbing my shoulders with stalwarts in this field like Professor Mayer Zur-Capellen, William Johnson, George Sander, Erskine Crossley, Jack Phillips, Len Monder, Besanov, and above all the towering Professor Arthur Bulevsky. The Association of Commonwealth Universities has been kind enough immediately to grant me the travel expenses, and thus I boarded a train to continental travel. I got down the train in Sofia as per the instructions in the letter and found none to contact me. Sofia, a beautiful town, but very quiet in the evening. With difficulty, I could get a telephone Gattoni and try to call the numbers on the letterhead without success. I came out of the station and to my surprise there were no taxis and no one speaking English. Finally, I found a young, nice couple who saw this letter in my hand and asked me to follow them to a tram. They were nice enough to use their tram ticket for me too. On the way, the lady went out first and the gentleman took me to a theatre. While I was praying God about my fate, he brought another gentleman from inside the theatre. I still had no clue what was happening. He was speaking very fast, something which I couldn't understand. And I just stood there. He took me to a telephone and called a translator. Finally, I understood that I should be leaving in another half an hour to Varna. There we ran and finally I got into the train and slept that night thinking of future surprises next day in Varna. Varna, this is a beautiful place, but no people at station as usual, and there are no telephones even. Literally, I prayed God and took to the only road, picked a direction as I could choose, and walked. I found a gentleman repairing his car underneath. I thought some help for me at last. I bent down and greeted this gentleman and told him if he could be of any help to me. Out comes Professor Konstantinov. He said, "Professor Rao, welcome to Varna." And that was history soon by the side of beaches and meetings and hospitality. I didn't even realize I am very young in this crowd. They made me feel at ease. I had several invitations during these discussions to give seminars in Europe. We produced an acceptable draft of proposed IFTOM constitution for further discussions in Zakopane, Poland. That has been a wonderful experience for me and a lot of education in this 1 week. It was another kind of experience in September when I reached Zakopane by train. That's also a beautiful small town across Tatyr Mountains, bordering Czechoslovakia. We could simply walk across these borders once we are there without a visa. Upon arrival to a makeshift hotel in this small town, I was greeted at the doorsteps with a Dzień dobry, and I reciprocated introducing myself, J.S. Rao, with a shake hand and shown a room to me. I shared my room with Professor D. Pata from Delft, a student of Professors Bizano and Grammel, historical figures of Stodola era on the reciprocating and rotating machinery dynamics, probably one of the best educating periods for me to understand a bit on what was happening at the turn of 19th century. Next day, the same gentleman greeted me once again with the same story, Dzień dobry, and likewise I reciprocated myself with a J.S. Rao. At the end of the meetings, we returned to the hotel and the same story repeated. And that story repeated next morning too. Then, of course, it was historic day on 27th September 1969. I signed on behalf of my country as a chief delegate. That made me the founding father of the Federation. What an honor it was. My teacher was there, but he insisted I sign the Constitution, true to his love and affection to me. You see here the meetings in progress. Jan Oderfeld, one of the founding fathers of the Constitution, conducting the meetings here, with me sitting on the left-hand side, and then you see Professor Len Wander, another founding father, sitting to the right. The meetings were in progress with Professor Erskine Crossley now discussing in the meetings, with me sitting opposite Professor Len Wander. After the signature ceremony, we returned to the hotel with the same story, Dzień dobry, J.S. Rao, repeating itself. I suspected something fishy going on here on this story, so I mentioned this to Professor D. Pata. He burst into laughter and explained that he was simply greeting me good day in Polish language. Next morning, before leaving, I greeted my friend carefully with a Dzień dobry. He scratched his head and after a little while reciprocated just Rao. I couldn't get him to understand what was happening. Instead, he probably spread the word that in Hindi, good day means just Rao. There are several honors that flowed from IFTOM to me. The IFTOM Indian Committee honored me as their chief delegate to the General Assemblies from the inception 1969 to 2 possible full terms till 1987. After this, IFTOM awarded me Indian Committee in 1983 World Congress. Professor Bernard Roth was presiding as president of IFTOM, and I was the conference chairman. In those days, my group wrote a program for sorting out all the national committee addresses and delegate addresses for faster communications between all the countries. Unfortunately, we had a problem in addresses of our colleagues from China, Beijing, and China, Taipei. The classification was since then adopted by us, and I learned for the first time the warmth and friendship from our Chinese colleagues in New Delhi, who actually sat together for both the national committees, and ever since I enjoy going to all China. I knew then any document I produce should be done with not only technical but otherwise with much care. That has been a good lesson for me from Bernie. Further honors flowed from IFTOM to me. I was appointed as chairman for the IFTOM Technical Committee in Rotor Dynamics 1983 to 90, which grew up to be one of the leading world bodies in this field. I was also appointed as a member of the IFTOM Executive Council from 1984 to 91. Then I was appointed as a chairman for the IFTOM Permanent Commission on Conferences from 1990 to 97. I was honored by the India IFTOM Committee and Association for Machines and Mechanisms for the distinguished services I rendered in the area of theory of machines and mechanisms and mechanical design and technical education, and with an honorary life membership in 1997. IFTOM then awarded me in 2004 an award for fundamental contributions as one of the founding fathers in developing IFTOM itself and mechanism machine sciences, and in promoting the Permanent Commission on History. I got the coveted award from Professor Ken Waldron for my IFTOM Distinguished Services in 2004. Immediately after that, we celebrated this with our Indian committee, which you can see here. In 2006 in Vienna, I was recognized by my technical committee on rotor dynamics, which I headed for more than 8 years, and elected me as its Emeritus chairman. It sure has been a great experience to have been a founding father of IFTOM and my association for last 40 years with this great scientific body. It has been a great learning curve for me, and IFTOM made me rich scientifically with full satisfaction and continues to inspire me. There is nothing more satisfying than attending IFTOM conferences and meetings. Several mechanism machine science researchers will continue to be benefited by IFTOM activities and contributions. We are all doing so well in the Federation, it is difficult for me to make any suggestions, keeping an eye on the future. Yet I will venture to make one. IFTOM can help universities, particularly in developing countries, in suggesting best ways of educating students in teaching of mechanisms and machine sciences by providing model curriculum and a compendium of AVIs illustrating motion and forces instead of drawings and pictures in textbooks. Well, thank you all very much for your patience to listen to me. Thank you, IFTOM, for making me a learned man. Have a good day.